Well, and I was going to say, I think the converse is also something that we want to bring up, though, is that talk a little bit about the freedom you feel once you realize that those choices are yours in being proactive and making those choices to be proactive.
Yeah, Eric, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, let's start with just kind of current events and stuff like that. Once back in March, like 3,000 years ago, it feels like. um, it was a very hard time to be proactive at first when everything just shifted. Everything went to being online. I know at first with classes and everything, I was struggling. I was getting behind on things just because I was like, just I'm like, I don't have the accountability here. It's not in person anymore. Online's difficult and stuff like that. But when I really sat down and I was actually Dr. Gergel, who I had a conversation with. I reached out to her to have a conversation and be like, Dr. Gergel, I'm struggling with this right now, and this is me right now trying to take action and to be proactive, being like, okay, I realize I do need help, which that's an important thing to realize. Sometimes being proactive means asking for help, means asking someone to be an accountability partner, because self accountability is a skill that you acquire over the course of time of just continually practicing it. And after doing that, I felt I was able to get more on top of my schoolwork, on top of other things I was having to do around the house, and just it was a huge relief actually, shifting to back to being more proactive, of not falling behind, of getting my like homework assignments done like days ahead of time instead of waiting until last minute and then having to stress over trying to get these done. So kind of that shift to being more proactive in terms of like, this is geared towards college students, of course. So it's just getting your homework done a little bit earlier, or not cram practicing for something. And it's a huge stress reliever and gets rid of a lot of that anxiety that we're already filled with as college students.
Eric, what you touched on reminds me of what Covey writes about how there's two circles. There's an inner circle and an outer circle. And we have to start by thinking about what we actually have influence over in our lives. And what we truly influence is ourself, right? And our decisions and our attitude and how we approach life and respond to life. Then there's a bigger circle, which is our circle of concern, which I feel, speaking for myself, that I've had a lot of concern these past few months, and maybe my concern barometer was way up, particularly at the beginning of the COVID crisis. I had to step back and realize what I could actually control, and I couldn't control, the broader spectrum of things, of what was happening with the spread of the virus, but I could make decisions about my attitude living in the safety of my home and how I was going to approach life. I could be proactive about turning the news off and not looking at negative things that were coming up on my news feed and social media. I could make proactive choices to read uplifting, growth mindset literature and books. I could listen to music that raised my spirits. I could play my instrument where I'd find joy. I could spend time reaching out to friends whom I hadn't connected with in years. I could find a way to turn a challenge into an opportunity. And I think that's important to remember, is that you focus on what you can make a difference in. And when you do that, you start to realize that your circle of influence actually starts to expand. And that's one of the great messages of Stephen Covey and the Be Proactive chapter, I think.
And I think for all of our future teachers, on looking at, how can we be proactive, and even teaching music. And so we're not in our normal environments. And so being one of my mentors, he put together a group, and they called it Banding Together. And it was, I think the last meeting we had 150 band directors that were all meeting together of how are we going to teach band virtually? What does this mean? What does it look like? And so it wasn't, well, because we've had our band rooms taken away, we can't teach band anymore. No, it was, all right, we have this dream of teaching music. How are we going to bring music to every student? And so that proactivity of being able to look at You know, what can we do to help our students? I think that's going to be one thing as teachers, that our listeners are going through it as students, but they will also have those same experiences, I think, as teachers. And I think that's something to also think about is, how would you how would you react if? And so some of those questions I know will filter into our courses this fall, of, if you had to teach this virtually, what would it look like? And begin to really help our students even think more proactively, as well as, I think you hit the nail on the head. It starts with the self, and then it begins to grow from there.
Yeah, I love that you raised and made this relevant to teachers and music education students. I'm going to reflect on how we took this great challenge and actually found wonderful opportunity in this moment. I may have shared this with Eric before, but one of the challenges that happened for our music education classes that we were no longer going to have the opportunity to rehearse students in live and a living color in action, right? That was the big thing. And we used to, bring students together, they would rehearse, they would make comments and recreate that situation. And we would rehearse college students in my upper level class prior to student teaching. Well, we didn't have that opportunity anymore, but we ended up collaborating with middle school and high school students at international schools in Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and a public school in Long Island, New York. Those students would send us videos and audio recordings, and then my Lawrence University students were able to give audio feedback and or video feedback to the students, and develop a relationship with actual middle school and high school students all around the world. And I'm confident that if we hadn't been thrown into this new situation, we wouldn't have discovered a way to find a new way to connect and make music around the world. So oftentimes a crisis leads to an opportunity if you can approach it with a proactive attitude. And that's one of the goals I think we all have to grow as individuals.